Hello, guys and gals, me Mudahar, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to have a little bit of a chat about the future of stuff that I'm going to be doing on this channel. And honestly, one thing that has me the most excited that I've ever been. Now, for the last 3 months, I know that I've been ragging on Microsoft. I've been talking about computer privacy. I've been talking about your safety. I've been talking about Big Brother spying on you. But in amongst all of the crazy, wild negativity that exists in the world, I have never been more passionate about talking about the penguin, ladies and gentlemen. And that is about really Linux. Now, going into the future, by 2026, I got a long time before GTA 6 drops. I've got a long time before serious life changes occur for me where I'll have less time to do YouTube. So, you can make of that what you will, right? But the reality of it is, I want to talk about interesting things. I want to go back to looking at some internet creepy pasta stuff. I want to, really go into looking at some deep web stuff, hopefully shying away from some of the more negative stuff because literally trying to browse I've literally just been editing something for it the last 20 hours, so to speak, like just sort of like looking through websites. A lot of it is still Hitman stuff. A lot of it, unfortunately, has become really illegal stuff. But I still try to wade through and find some of the funny things that at least I can show you. But something that is so positive for me, okay, is talking about Linux. Now, I don't know if you guys have known this, but Linux broke 5% desktop share in the United States. If you don't know why that isn't a big deal, I want you to remember, okay, we've been going up one something percent every year. Now I know for a fact nobody, Muda, no one, no normie, okay, no grandpa that is browsing on the computer is going to be installing Linux. Okay, this is never going to happen. Okay, that's crazy shit. But, in the last 3 months, some of the most popular videos on this channel have been talking about, ragging on Windows, obviously, but also using Linux. The other day, I made a video where I talked about Zorin OS, and, a week before that, I talked about something. I made the monthly Linux Cope video into the almost weekly Linux Cope video. But it's not so much Cope, in my opinion, as it is actually teaching. Now, some of the most popular stuff here has been sort of teaching you how to run Windows stuff on Linux, how to get games up and running on Linux, and it really has shown me that there's a market of people that just exist out on the internet that want to escape this evil island that we have, okay? This evil island where almost every single corporation wants to stick surveillance tech into your software. They want to put AI everywhere, to the point where you can't even escape from it, okay? You can't just escape. You can't just hide in your shell and escape from, all these big brother tech firms looking into your day-to-day life without any goddamn impunity. Now, I've been using Linux for like 6 years now, and it's brought a lot of like joy into my life. Joy in the sense that I'm a tinker. I love playing around with stuff. I love playing around with all forms of technology. And nothing has been more exciting for me than firing up Linux and trying to get things to work. Maybe that's just a psycho masochist in me, but I do tend to enjoy it. And then the last 3-4 months, one of the reasons why I've been super duper positive about it, and one of the reasons why I want to make it sort of a future point of my channel, sort of talk about it going into 2026 pretty heavily, is because I really do feel like we're on a cusp of things kind of changing. We're on a cusp of actual competition finally arriving. And I guess one of the reasons I'm making this video is to sort of like ask you what it is that you want to go forward with, because, from time to time any YouTuber has to talk to their audience and just sort of get a gauge of where things go into the future. Take some constructive criticism, take some, actual, just talking to the community, right? So, I want to just kind of ask you how interested you would be in if we decided to just go further into the Linux side and start to actually talk about getting not just your favorite, programs to run, but also how to make the experience just that much more closer to what you're currently used to. I've noticed in the comment section, there's been a lot of people that have been asking, Muda, what if I don't have Steam? What if I don't care for Valve? Can I just install games onto my actual system just like I would? And I don't know if they're asking me if they want to pirate video games onto their stuff. Sometimes it can be hard to tell in the coded speak we have. But, yes, you can. And, I've kind of shown it on my channel, but I feel like there's got to be better ways for me to sort of like tutorialize this. A couple days ago when I made that Zorin OS video, I really wanted to show people sort of that raw, uncut experience of what it's like to switch over. I really hate it when like channels start to like almost hide the fact that there sometimes is resistance. Sometimes things aren't so picture perfect. So I do like to show you guys the experience as it is, so you as a viewer can judge if you really want to go down such a confusing road. But looking at things like modding video games, for instance, which I've had a lot of questions asked. It's like, Muda, do you mod video games? And actually, today I was just modding Cyberpunk 2077, and I actually was blown away by how easy it is underneath, platforms like Linux now, with a lot of software that just sort of does it all for you. It's not just that, but even for things like content creation, like people who want to edit videos, record things, be content creators like live streamers, a lot of these stuff is almost nearly feature complete. And again, in a world where computer hardware is getting super duper expensive and the upgrade paths are becoming limited in the mainstream, having actual competition really, in my opinion, just helps in every single way. But honestly, the only way that it's going to work is if there's actual good tutorials, there's actual good like material out there for people to actually learn from. Like I said, in the last 3-4 months, analytics don't necessarily lie. Some of the best videos on this channel have been basically me guiding people on how to leave the Windows or even Mac prison and enter into the world of free and open source. I've never been so passionate about things like this, especially when it comes to free open source stuff, because, I think it's been really depressing the last 3-4 months looking at how wild things have sort of gotten, right? How ramped up, honestly, since the beginning of 2025, how ramped up surveillance has gotten, how much privacy has been attacked, how many actual cyber attacks occur. And generally speaking, for a lot of people who just sort of sit there and wonder, there's just no way we can evade this. There's no way we can escape from this Matrix mood. There really is actually a way you can escape from this. And I think one of them is just, kind of talking about having a fun time discussing the old Penguin. Now, obviously, for me, I do want to talk about other things as well, too. I want to talk about emulation a little bit more in depth, too, because there's been a lot of advancements in almost every single thing that I've been passionate about. But yeah, one of the things that has sort of really struck with me, ladies and gentlemen, is just sort of yapping about Linux, man. Like, I've never been so excited waking up sometimes to record a video when it's about the Penguin, when it's talking about, like, running even Windows applications. Sometimes it baffles my mind because I wonder, like, why the fuck would somebody sit there and watch, like, a fat Indian guy show how to set up Docker containers? And, a lot of it is just mostly due to the fact that I think people tune into those videos not because, they're coming in for an entertaining time or to listen to me, but I think it's mostly obviously due to the fact that there is a growing contingent of people that just want the ability to switch over. And I think at some point, making videos where, making something that is more welcoming to the audience is far better. I've noticed that in this community of like Linux and shit, like open source, materials, there's so much elitism and there's so much like infighting and constant bickering and drama that occurs. Like, especially when you look at some of these projects, I've covered it, obviously, in the last few weeks. But I think, for a lot of people who are jumping in, there are ways that you can get into this train, easy ways, difficult ways, right? There's a lot of people in the Linux community that say that your experience isn't really fucking valid unless you're using some of the hardest distributions, some of the most convoluted distributions out there. And then, there's obviously the other camp that, just wants to keep things effectively as easy as they can. And for me, that's kind of where I've been making my content. I've just been sort of showing you guys nearly the resistance-free, almost like the easiest pathways into this like lifestyle, into this like universe. That really is just designed for most people who I know for a fact just want to use a computer to browse the internet, maybe make a video or two if you're like a budding content creator, or you are just like a content creator in general, or people who just want to play things like video games. Now, obviously, even with things like Linux, there's a long ways to go to actual, feature parity. I mean, games that require anti-cheats, anything of that nature, games that are made by developers who are so heavily resistant to the Penguin. These are just avenues we're going to be having to work towards, find alternate paths around, or just learn to vote with our wallets. For me, I just don't purchase video games that don't support the Penguin anymore, simply because ultimately, at the end of the day, the gaming market is very oversaturated to begin with. I can always just buy something that supports me instead of trying to work around something that ultimately will never accept this platform. But yeah, the future of this channel, I really want to kind of talk a little bit more about Linux for a little bit. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I know that for some people it can be a really tiring thing, but that's where I do want to talk to you guys. Obviously, it's not the only form of content that I will be covering. That would be fucking stupid. Ever since the beginning of this channel, I've always diversified myself on talking about really what it is that interests me, whether it be, internet creepy pastas, whether it be internet creepy stories, whether it be funny things, whether it be a little bit of that internet like gossipy drama stuff, whether it be just computer viruses or whatnot. These are things that always interest me. That's a cornerstone of this channel. I feel like if I ever start uploading things that just don't spark me, then at that point it might be just better to completely retire and call it quits. But for me, going into the future, I do want to make more Linux content. I've just, for me, the last like 3-4 months, just talking about Linux stuff, just talking about like, computer stuff in general, just showing people the sort of alternate portal to another world that they could be going to is what's been the most exciting thing about making videos. And I hope that some of you guys have probably seen it in the content that I've been making, right? Like, hey, the eyes really perk up when I get to fucking talk about some goddamn alternate, right? When I get to sit from this aisle and sort of guide people and convert them. I almost feel like a fucking, like a Jehovah's Witness almost. I knock on your door at 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, so have you ever heard of Lunix? Have you ever heard of Tux the Penguin? Do you know that there's alternatives to this hell that you're subjecting yourself to? Yeah, I feel like that's just kind of the path that, I want to take over here. And I kind of want to make more educational style videos than this that are still hopefully entertaining and hopefully cater to a market of people that just literally are just trying to switch off without all the annoying, convoluted nature of it. Linux is just one of those things where ultimately at the end of the day, it will never be a 100%, like you'll never overtake, okay? I think it's completely delusional. I'd have to be a completely delulu nut job to think that at one point, most people in the world would be using Linux. It's just never going to happen. But, seeing the percent go up one by one each year is pretty goddamn impressive. Just to see people actually using Linux more and more and more, especially in places like the United States, where to this day, there is still not, computers that you can go to in a Best Buy in a goddamn like I was about to say Future Shop, but that's like from my childhood. Really any tech store, Walmart, and purchase a laptop that isn't, loaded with Windows or that isn't a Chromebook in some capacity. To see the number go up, regardless of all of that, is actually pretty goddamn impressive to see. And, like I said, the other day when I talked about Zorin OS, seeing 1 million downloads over there. Obviously, how many of those million actually stayed over? That's a good question. But to see people sort of engage with an alternative and try things out is impressive. And I think going into the future, and I've covered Linux for years now at this point, but I do kind of want to get a little bit more aggressive because, I start to see that people are switching over, and really it has to be, it needs a welcoming community to help people completely switch over. And, beyond me, there's plenty of other great channels that discuss Linux now. Gamers Nexus has been making pretty good benchmarking things as well, too. There's an amazing channel called The Primogen who's also been covering Linux as well. Brody Robertson is a pretty good guy. There's just a lot of people that cover this angle, a lot of people in the tech space that cover this stuff with a lot of positivity and a lot of welcoming behavior that I think ultimately this community kind of needs, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, I do want to ask you what your thoughts are with the future of this channel in regards to Linux content. I know that there's a fair amount of people that really enjoy it. There's, you look at the analytics, a lot of people subscribe to this channel. When you look into those videos, like a lot of people jump in and stick around because they want to just end up learning more. So I guess, all I could really ask you is, what do you really want to know about the next thing? Do you want to know how to make Linux into the best content creation machine? Do you want to learn more about virtual machines? Hell, do you want to actually start modding games? What is it that you want to do? What are the burning questions? What are the last few things that you need to finally switch over to the Penguin that this fat Indian guy can help you with on the internet is what I'm really asking for. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, just wanted to kind of yap a little bit about this. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.